Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review. In today's review, we're going to be taking a trip in the TARDIS of the Fifth Doctor in the continuation of his 40th anniversary celebrations in 40 Volume 2, featuring the 6-part epic that is the Auton Infinity, as written by Tim Foley. This release is available to purchase now on the official Big Finish website in multiple different formats, including physical CD and download, and it can also be purchased as part of a bundle alongside Volume 1 of 40, which I did of course review earlier this year. Although the Auton Infinity is a continuation of the plot arc that we did of course see initially established within 40 Volume 1, where we see the Fifth Doctor at various points within his time stream, the Auton Infinity can be seen as a separate story. It has a different flow compared to the other episodes, seeing the Cybermen and the Ice Warriors, and overall the plot itself is completely different and sort of not related, but at the same time we have that plot arc which is intertwined and threaded throughout the entirety of the events of this series, kind of stirring events forward. So if you really want to listen to the Auton Infinity and don't want to purchase Volume 1, then that is indeed possible, although I believe you won't be able to fully appreciate the narrative and the story arc that is featured within this episode due to not having the initial context which has been established within 40 Volume 1, which does a really good job of presenting the context of this series in a rather simple manner, but also an emotional manner for what is ultimately quite a timey-wimey all over the place concept. So this time round, this entire box set is one big 6-part story, which is actually rather unique for an 80s Doctor Who release, however one that I very much welcomed. I think there is always that concern with a 6-part Doctor Who story that the plot is either going to drag or the actual message that the story is meant to convey is going to get lost within a rather long story, but with Tim Foley at the helm, I think this story does a very good job of pacing itself, keeping the episode interesting. I think that this is particularly helped by the fact that we have such a wide range of characters and locations which really make the audio drama come to life and keep the stakes high. As I've already mentioned, this set follows the arc set up within 40 Volume 1, reviewed earlier this year, and it provides very good context for this story's big problem, and that is the fact that the Fifth Doctor is basically taken out of his original own time stream and placed within his past and future, meaning he is accompanied by pretty much his entire TARDIS team at multiple different points within their various adventures in space and time. It's very much a celebration of what we got to see on TV and the various milestones, I suppose, within the Fifth Doctor era. This does of course naturally possess interesting problems for the Fifth Doctor in particular, because his TARDIS team is a rather troubled one, seeing them come to terms with the likes of the loss of Adric and the betrayal of Turlough. This story, especially within its later half, adds some great further developments to these characters, and I think the main protagonists really embrace Tim Foley's writing. Although this series has been a celebration of the Fifth Doctor era, I also think it's actually been quite a celebration of Tegan as a companion, being a forever constant within this Doctor's life. Peter Davison and Janet Fielding have some great moments throughout. Of course, naturally, within the first box set, we've seen the Fifth Doctor being fully aware of the future events of Adric's passing, however, not actually being able to tell his companions, and that does, of course, cause him quite a lot of emotional stress, and even throughout this story, we see the Fifth Doctor in a very difficult situation within the last 2 episodes of this box set, and I think that Peter Davison really does an excellent job, and it's possibly, in fact, some of the best acting that I've seen from him on Big Finish to date. The early parts of this story do of course see a good old Auton invasion, as the Autons have decided to infiltrate a unit alien invasion exercise, and it's basically taking the mick out of a classic Doctor Who invasion story, complete with rubber monster masks and everything. The Doctor soon realises that the Autons are back, but also that they are in an alliance with the Master, with clear tributes to the Third Doctor serial Terror of the Autons featured throughout. It's lovely to see the Brigadier back alongside Five, and John Culshaw, as always, offers an authentic performance. The Brigadier's inclusion also allows Turlough to have some really nice scenes, although he isn't particularly the main focus of the story. If anything, he's kind of a background character, but it's still great to see him within the episode, and again, very much evoking a certain era within the Fifth Doctor's travels. Of course, if you're somebody who is not a fan of recasting, then this episode is an absolute stay away, because we have John Culshaw basically playing everyone in this cast, from the Ainley Master to Chameleon, as well as the Brigadier. Personally, I really do like his portrayal of the Brigadier. It's really grown on me over the past few years, and equally his performance as Chameleon is also excellent, really humorous, but also really representing that clunky nature of the robot within the TV show, but making him a bit more streamlined and modern for modern sci-fi, I suppose, and generally making him a more functional character compared to what we got to see on our TV screens. One of the big pulls of this story is that we also see John Culshaw playing the Anthony Ainley Master, which I do believe is a first for a main range story or a main Doctor Who release at least. And again, it's definitely down to personal preference as to what you think. Personally, for me, I think that it's very much one of those situations where I am not 100% convinced yet as to the portrayal, but much like the Brigadier, I think that it will definitely grow on me over time, but I'm not 100% convinced as of yet. It's naturally, of course, great to see the Fifth Doctor going up against the Master once again. It's really nice to have that dynamic being explored a little bit further, especially given a number of the plot points within this story. There's also some really great references to some of the other Fifth Doctor stories as well, with particular links to the likes of the Five Doctors, which again really evoke the style of the Fifth Doctor era on our screen, making this story very much feel like an anniversary celebration. One of the best bits about this story for me as a listener was being able to actually hear a bit more context and background set around the Autons as a foe and why they exist, because within the TV show they do very much get fixed to the trope of they are plastic shop window dummies, but we've also seen them explored in a little bit more of a realistic manner, especially within, say, the 11th Doctor, the Pandorica Opens, where the Auton very much looks like a human person with simply a gun in their hand. And I do love the way that Foley uses plastic throughout this story. For example, there is a unit soldier who has their hands basically melted into a wheel so they can drive a car and basically be a chauffeur for the Autons, which is really eerie. The use of plastic is very effective, quite gory, and I also like that we get to dig a little bit deeper into the actual Nestine consciousness and what that means as a race and a alien that exists within the universe that ultimately doesn't have a home due to the events of the likes of the Time War. So I really do like that aspect of the story, but again, that's merely in the early half of this episode where we see them basically invading a unit mock invasion, which I think is quite fun and plays on the tropes of classic Doctor Who well. One of the main reasons that we get this character development is because of the excellent character called Prodigal, who we follow basically throughout the entirety of this story. Even when the episode turns more Doctor focused towards the end, I think that Juliet Aubrey really does actually steal the show. All of the scenes that she is in are quite emotional. You definitely feel for the character, despite the fact that perhaps at the very beginning of the story she is the more sort of evil villain of the episode. So I do definitely like the way that Foley has balanced the multiple different components within this story, and a little bit of a tease of what you can expect. The cliffhangers are excellent. There are so many great cliffhangers throughout this story, which kept me hooked, because initially, due to this being a 6-part episode and due to me having reservations at the very beginning, initially I was going to pace this story over a few days, maybe 1 or 2 episodes, then give it a day, then return to it, then give it another day. However, I ended up listening to the entirety of this episode in the space of 1 afternoon, because once I started listening to it, I simply wanted to listen all the way through until the very end. So I think that is definitely a very good sign. If you are a newer listener, I do probably recommend pacing this story. As I've mentioned, especially towards the end, it can get quite heavy in plot as we basically tackle the solution as to why the Doctor is being splintered throughout his timeline. And you know what? I think it is a really satisfying conclusion to this series. I think it's done a very good job of measuring its plot arc and not basically biting off more than it can chew. It's a very satisfying conclusion to the series, and overall it's been a great celebration of the Fifth Doctor era in its various iterations and TARDIS teams. It's showcased many of the different companions, be it Tegan or Nyssa, who've been on many adventures with the Fifth Doctor, or the companions that had less time on the TARDIS, with the likes of Chameleon and Adric. But what I like is, as well as relishing in the past and future of the Fifth Doctor era, it also fills in a few of those holes within the TV show's events, which kind of make emotions and feelings run a bit more naturally. And again, that's what I love about Tim Foley's way of writing. writing is that he can really fill in those emotional responses to certain characters and get in the mind of the personality that he is writing for, meaning that we do see excellent scenes for the Brigadier, Tegan and the Fifth Doctor throughout this story, as well as developing the Autons into a rather interesting foe. So it's overall for 42 a great way to summarise the 40 celebrations for the Fifth Doctor era, and if you are a fan of the Fifth Doctor era in general, then I most certainly recommend this one. And if you are somebody who wants to experience a grand epic that you don't need any context for really beyond these box sets, then I definitely recommend listening to 40 and purchasing both sets, because both of them do very different but rather strong and excellent things, and generally overall I think it's a rather accessible listen for those of you who haven't perhaps listened to too much Big Finish before. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for regular Doctor Who content. And on that note, have a nice day, and I shall see you all next time.